She sat at that luxurious desk, listening to Jack's endless complaints as he brought her to one of his father's companies. She sighed in boredom, watching him with disgust as he whined while sipping his drink. I'm tired of my brother's behavior and his constant orders, as if I'm a 5-year-old. He won't even let me step foot in his workplace or talk about him in the press, as if he's ashamed of me, Jack grumbled. He's right, Laura muttered unconsciously in a low voice, earning a confused look from Jack. What? Jack asked. I said you shouldn't care, darling. She corrected herself with a fake smile. He sighed and nodded before leaning in to kiss her cheek. She clenched her fists tightly, fighting the overwhelming disgust and hatred she felt for him, trying to pull away subtly as he straightened up to answer a call from his father. Rolling her eyes coldly, she remained seated alone while he walked out to the balcony. She opened his laptop, browsing through his messy finances and amateur operations. She chuckled bitterly and whispered under her breath, Your work is so pathetic and worthless, no one will even notice if it disappears, darling. Laura said maliciously, playing around with his accounts and causing mischief. When she finished, she leaned back, thinking about her bigger plan, sighing heavily. One day I'll frame you and your father for crimes you didn't commit. You'll taste death with your own eyes, she vowed darkly. Jack returned and sat beside her again, oblivious, as she kept up her calm facade, engaging him in conversation. Jack? Laura called sweetly. Yes, Jack replied. Everything I did was to use my father's power and influence to live the perfect life I wanted, even if it was at the expense of others, Jack said shamelessly. So you admit you've made mistakes? Laura pressed. Sure, maybe once, twice, even 3 times, but I don't see any wrong in it. I was born strong and rich. It's my right to exploit that, to break the law, to make everyone obey me, even when I'm wrong. That's the way of the John bloodline. My righteous brother is the only one who disagrees. He hates injustice so much he wouldn't hurt a damn ant. Jack ranted drunkenly, finishing one glass and grabbing another. Laura watched him with a deep, burning hatred as he rambled on, until he finally collapsed onto the couch, unconscious from the
A new dawn broke, its rays sneaking into the office where Jack lay sprawled among empty bottles. He woke up groggily to the loud sound of the door being thrown open, turning in shock to see his older brother and father storming in. Brother? Father? Why are you so angry? Jack asked, confused and worried. You fool! How could you leak company secrets and disgrace us like this? Mr. John roared. Jack stared at him, panicked, shaking his head. I swear I didn't, father. Believe me, Jack pleaded. This is why I never let you touch my businesses. You're a failure, utterly useless. You only bring harm. Jungkook snapped. Brother, believe me, I didn't do anything. I'm innocent, Jack insisted. Shut up. We've spent years cleaning up your messes like stray dogs. You've tarnished our reputation time and again, Jungkook shouted. Clutching the steering wheel tightly, he fought against the tide of bitter memories that crashed over him. Closing his eyes, he was haunted by the teenage mistakes he had made, all because he chose to cover for Jack instead of letting him face justice. His phone rang, jarring him from his dark thoughts. He was about to ignore it when he saw the caller ID. Her name appeared on the screen, and instinctively he answered. Good morning, my narcissistic man, Laura's bright voice greeted him. A small, broken laugh escaped him as the tightness in his chest eased. Good morning, my bliss, Jungkook replied softly. You don't sound well. Is everything okay? Laura asked. How did you know? Jungkook asked. From your voice. Are you sick? Laura pressed. No, I'm fine. Can we meet? Jungkook asked. Of course, it's a day off anyway. Where should we go? Laura said. Why don't you come over to my penthouse? We can have lunch together, Jungkook suggested. Sure, I'll come right over, Laura agreed. See you soon, Jungkook said before ending the call. Taking a deep breath, he started the car and headed towards his penthouse. On the way, he spotted a woman, her brunette hair flowing down her back, her slim waist accentuated by the fitted skirt and blazer she wore. He felt a flutter in his gut, then confusion. He quickly dismissed it, turning onto the road that led to his home. A few moments later, Jungkook saw Laura's car pulling up in front of his penthouse. He took another deep breath, preparing himself for her presence. Laura stepped out of her car and locked it, taking a moment to check her reflection in the car window before heading up the front steps. The doorman opened the doors for her as she walked in, her eyes sweeping the foyer. Laura felt a warm, comfortable feeling in her gut as she headed towards the elevator. She pressed the penthouse button, the elevator rising swiftly as her heart began pounding faster. Stepping into the penthouse, Laura took a moment to admire her surroundings. She was interrupted by the sound of footsteps and turned to see Jungkook walking towards her, a smile on his face. "You're here," he said, his voice warm. Laura returned his smile, walking towards him and giving him a hug. "Of course I am. I missed you." Jungkook wrapped his arms around her, breathing in her scent as he held her closer. "I missed you too," he murmured. Laura pulled back, looking up at him with a playful glint in her eyes. "Well, let's not waste any more time. I'm starving." Jungkook chuckled, leading her towards the dining area. "Your wish is my command, my lady. I already had lunch prepared and waiting for us." Laura sat down at the table, her eyes widening as she saw the delicious spread laid out before her. "You really know the way to my heart," she teased. Jungkook took a seat opposite her, watching her intently as she ate. "You always look so beautiful when you eat," he said softly. Laura laughed, her cheeks flushing a light pink. "You're just saying that." Jungkook shook his head, his gaze serious. "No, I mean it. You look radiant." She blushed even harder, lowering her eyes to her plate. "You really know how to make a girl feel special." "You are special," Jungkook said, reaching out and placing his hand over hers. "You're everything to me." Laura looked up at him again, her heart fluttering at his words. She turned her hand over to entwine their fingers together. "I feel the same way about you," she murmured, her voice soft and sincere. Jungkook's thumb rubbed gently over her knuckles, his eyes fixated on her with a hunger that surprised even himself. He watched as she ate, her lips forming a sensual pout as she chewed and swallowed. He wanted to drag her into his arms, to feel her body pressed tight against his. Laura noticed the intensity in his gaze, and her heart skipped a beat. She could sense the undercurrent of desire that was building between them, and it sent a shiver down her spine. She continued eating, her senses heightened as she felt his eyes on her the entire time. As they finished eating, the air between them crackled with sexual tension. Their eyes met, and it was as if a silent agreement passed between them. Jungkook stood up and held out his hand to her. "Come with me," he said, his voice low and rumbling. Laura took his hand, allowing him to lead her away from the table and towards the bedroom. As they walked, she could feel the heat radiating from him, his grip on her hand firm and possessive. Once they entered the bedroom, he closed the door behind them, the click of the latch somehow sounding louder than usual in the quiet room. A week passed, and everything had calmed down between everyone. During that time, Laura was deeply focused on her project, dreaming of becoming a successful businesswoman as she had always wished. She stood alone in the meeting room, thinking about the file she held in her hands. She froze suddenly when she felt his warm embrace and the touch of his breath against her fair skin, making her smile softly as she tried to resist the weakness overwhelming her heart. "How are you, my bliss?" he asked. "I'm fine, my love. I finally finished the file, and tonight I'll present it to Jimin. Since you're also my partner, I want you to take a look at it and give me your opinion," Laura replied. "Everything you do is perfect, just like you, my bliss," he said. "Work is work, my man," Laura whispered, meeting his sharp gaze as she placed the file in his hands. He opened it and began reading it seriously while she gazed at his handsome features. She reached out to touch the roughness of his jawline. "Did you let your beard grow out?" Laura asked. "No, I just didn't shave this week. I've been extremely busy," he answered while still focusing on the file. She nodded quietly, reaching for her phone as it started ringing. "Yes, Susan?" Laura answered. "Laura, come quickly! Something terrible happened!" Susan cried. "What's wrong?" Laura asked urgently. "They're destroying our house!" Susan shouted. Before Susan could explain further, Laura heard the sounds of things breaking on the other end of the line, increasing her anxiety and fear. She grabbed her jacket and ran out, but John stopped her. "What's wrong, Laura?" he asked. "I'll tell you later. Susan needs me," Laura replied. "Should I come with you?" he offered. "No, my love, there's no need," Laura said, trying to hide her tension with a sigh. He nodded, releasing her hand, and she quickly left Park Company, running and ignoring the bewildered looks of the employees watching her. Laura hailed a taxi, her anxiety increasing every moment. She reached her building and found her home in chaos, with men destroying everything in sight. The sight of the scene brought tears to her eyes as the man in charge approached her, smiling wickedly. "Looks like the little girl has finally decided to come back," the man said. "Why are you doing this?" Laura asked. "This house is no longer yours." "It is under my name now," he replied. Just then, a neighbor hurriedly approached Laura. "Miss Laura, this is terrible. That man is the head of the Yun clan. They are the most powerful and cruel mafiosos in Seoul," the neighbor said in a hushed tone. Hearing this increased the terror in Laura's heart, and the neighbor continued, "There is no one in this country who dares to defy them. I heard that this man, Yoon, has fallen in love with you and wants you. That's why he used his connections, power, and wealth to acquire your property." Laura looked at him in disbelief, but the neighbor's grim expression confirmed the dire reality of the situation. She realized that this powerful and dangerous mafioso had set his relentless gaze on her, and there would be no way to escape from his clutches. Just then, the man, Yoon, approached her again and said, "From now on you will be mine." Laura's fear escalated, her gaze shifting to Susan, who had rushed to protect her, but the man stopped her and dragged her away. The man came closer, lifting Laura's chin with his rough hands, examining her features with a cold gaze. "You're beautiful indeed," he said. His gaze roamed over her face, studying her as if she was an object that he wanted to own, causing her skin to crawl at the thought. Laura's eyes widened, her body freezing as a deep voice said, "What the hell is happening here?" She recognized that voice, and hope and anticipation began to replace her fear. Her heart skipped a beat as she watched him standing in front of her, his eyes reflecting anger and determination. Yoon froze as well, facing the intimidating presence of her boyfriend, who had already reached her side and stood protectively next to her. The goons quickly backed down upon seeing the newcomer, and the man, Yoon, looked at Laura, then at her savior, and his gaze turned into a venomous glare. "Who do you think you are?" Yoon asked. The newcomer's gaze was sharp and intimidating as he protectively put his arm around Laura, drawing her close to his side. Laura felt safe, her heart reassured by his presence, while Yoon's expression of hatred and anger deepened. "Tell your man to stop the demolition," the newcomer said, his voice stern and commanding, leaving no room for negotiation. The goons obeyed quickly, halting their destruction of Laura's belongings, their eyes fixated on the intimidating figure standing beside her. Laura felt a sense of comfort and security in his presence, but Yoon, fueled by jealousy and possessiveness, could no longer contain his emotions. He clenched his fists tightly as he realized the powerful and wealthy man had claimed Laura. "Is she yours?" Yoon's gaze shifted from Laura to her savior, his envy and resentment evident. Yes, she's mine, the man answered with a calm and possessive tone, his gaze fixed on Yoon. The air seemed to sizzle with tension as Yoon clenched his jaw tighter, his anger reaching its peak. Laura felt his jealousy, his intense desire to keep her for himself. She should be mine. I am the one who has loved her and desired her all this time, Yoon exclaimed, his voice filled with resentment. The newcomer clenched his jaw, his gaze becoming even more serious and intimidating. She never belonged to you, and she never will, he stated firmly. Yoon's face twisted with rage. She should have been mine. I've loved her from afar, desiring her, dreaming of making her mine. But she never saw me, never even knew I existed. And then you appear out of nowhere, and she's now with you? The newcomer's eyes narrowing, his expression becoming fierce. It's not about what you want or what should have been. She chose me, and I chose her. She's mine, he replied fiercely. As Yoon was escorted away by the police, Laura let out a sigh of relief and leaned her head against the newcomer's chest. He held her tightly, his hand gently stroking her hair, offering her comfort and reassurance. Laura's heart was still pounding from the encounter with Yoon and the chaos that had unfolded in her home. She looked up at her boyfriend, her voice trembling slightly as she spoke. Thank you. Thank you for being here, for protecting me. He cupped her face tenderly, his gaze full of concern. Of course, my love. I'll always be here to protect you, he replied, placing a gentle kiss on her forehead. Laura felt a sense of security within his arms, a feeling that everything would be all right as long as he was with her. She wrapped her arms around him, burying her face in his chest, taking in his familiar scent. He hugged her back, pressing her against his broad chest, his hand gently running through her hair. You're safe now. I won't let anything happen to you, he reassured her, his voice filled with love and determination. Laura nodded, her heart overflowing with love for him. She knew that she could trust him, that he would always be there to protect her. Together, they would face any challenges that came their way, because they were in love and nothing could tear them apart. Let's go somewhere quiet where we can talk, he suggested, his hand gently taking hers. She nodded, grateful for his understanding, and he led her away from the chaotic scene of her destroyed home. He hailed the cab and they climbed in, the streets of Seoul passing by outside the window. Laura leaned her head against his shoulder, her thoughts still swirling with the events that had just occurred. The cab driver discreetly glanced back at them, noticing the tenderness and protectiveness he displayed towards her. The man held her hand tightly, entwining their fingers together as if trying to soothe her troubled heart. The silence between them was comfortable, yet filled with unspoken words. Laura closed her eyes, basking in the warmth of his presence, feeling his love surrounding her like a protective shield. The cab arrived at a quaint cafe located away from the bustling city. The man gently guided her out of the car and led her inside, finding a quiet table in the corner. Once they were seated, he held her hands across the table, his fingers lightly tracing hers. Laura looked up at him, her eyes filled with a mixture of relief, love, and a tad of worry. He noticed the uneasiness in her expression and gently asked, What's on your mind, my love? She hesitated for a moment, her gaze dropping to the table. I can't help but worry about what happened back there. What if Yoon's obsession leads him to do something more extreme? He seems so obsessed with me. I don't know what he's capable of, she confessed, her voice shaky. He squeezed her hand reassuringly. I won't let him come near you again. You're safe with me, I promise. I'll do everything in my power to protect you from him and anyone else who tries to harm you, he affirmed, his voice firm and resolute.